Have you ever worked the night shift? There's something about the world after midnight, something that feels off. Maybe it's the way the silence stretches too long, or the way shadows seem to shift when you're not looking. Maybe it's the feeling that you're not alone, even when you're sure you are. Tonight, I have 4 true night shift horror stories for you. Stories that prove some things are better left unseen, and some doors should never be opened. These aren't just stories, they're warnings. Because when the world sleeps, something else wakes up. I used to work security at a hospital. The night shift was always quiet. Too quiet. Mostly routine checks, escorting late-night staff to their cars, ensuring the halls stayed silent. But there were nights when the silence felt wrong, as if something unseen lurked just beyond the edge of perception. One night I was finishing my rounds when something on the security monitors caught my eye. At first, it was just a shadow at the far end of the parking lot, just outside the camera's range. A man. He wasn't moving. He wasn't walking toward the entrance, looking for his car or waiting for someone. He was just standing there, his head tilted slightly as if watching, as if listening. I leaned in, squinting at the grainy footage. The longer I stared, the more something felt off. It was his posture, too rigid, unnatural, like a mannequin placed just so. I radioed my partner, but he was on the other side of the building. So I went to check it out myself. The second I stepped outside, the cold hit me like a slap. The wind had picked up, yet there was no rustling, no movement. The air was thick, pressing against me like unseen hands. The lot was nearly empty, just a few scattered vehicles. But the man, he was gone. A sick feeling twisted in my gut. I walked toward the spot where I had seen him, my flashlight casting long, shifting shadows. The beam flickered for just a second, just long enough to make my heart pound, but there was nothing there, no footprints, no sign anyone had been there at all. Then I heard it. Footsteps, not distant, not echoing down the lot. They were close, too close, right behind me. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the dark. Nothing, just rows of parked cars, their windshields reflecting the dim glow of the streetlights. My breath fogged in front of me. I strained my ears, listening. Silence. I should have run. I should have bolted for the security office. But something kept me rooted to the spot. A presence, a feeling that I wasn't alone, that I was being watched, closely, intimately. I turned back, quickening my steps toward the security office. As I reached for the door, a prickling sensation ran up my spine. The monitors. I needed to check the monitors. And that's when I saw him. The live feed flickered. The man was no longer at the far end of the parking lot. He was closer, standing just outside the security office, staring. My breath caught in my throat. His face was obscured, blurred like a digital glitch, but his eyes, those were clear, and they were locked onto me, cold, unblinking, empty. A knot of dread tightened in my chest. I lunged for the door, bolting it shut behind me. My hands were trembling as I kept my gaze fixed on the monitor. He didn't move, not for minutes, not for hours. He just stood there, watching. The night dragged on and exhaustion set in. Every so often I'd glance at the monitor, expecting him to be gone. But he never left, never moved, just stared. And then, as the first light of dawn bled across the sky, I finally found the courage to open the door. The lot was empty, no trace of the man, no footprints, no sign anyone had been there at all. Except for one thing, a single handprint on the glass, smudged, distorted. The fingers were too long, too thin, pressing against the surface as if something inhuman had left it behind. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? I checked the footage again later that week, and there he was, night after night. standing just beyond the camera's reach. Watching. Always watching, but that wasn't the worst part. One night, as I sat alone in the office, listening to the hum of the monitors, I heard something, a whisper, soft, just beneath the static, my name, and then the power cut out, total darkness, and I wasn't alone. I worked the overnight shift at a gas station off a deserted highway. We rarely had customers after 2 a.m., so it was mostly just me, a radio playing static-filled music, and the hum of the refrigerators. Then the phone rang. We weren't supposed to get calls at night. I picked up, but all I heard was breathing. Heavy, deliberate breathing. "Hello?" I said. Nothing, just the breathing. Then, a whisper. Low, crackling, like someone was speaking from far away. "You shouldn't be alone." Click. The line went dead. I looked outside. Nothing but an empty parking lot and a flickering streetlight. I shook it off and went back to stocking shelves. But then the phone rang again. This time, I didn't answer. Instead, I checked the caller ID. The call was coming from inside the gas station. I turned, heart pounding, staring at the employee break room. The door was open, but the lights were off. Someone was in there. I grabbed the bat we kept under the counter and moved slowly. My fingers shook as I reached for the light switch. I flicked it on. The room was empty. The phone, off the hook, receiver dangling by the cord. But there was something else. On the table, scratched into the cheap wood, were 3 words. "I see you." The next night, I made sure the break room door was locked. But at 3 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, I let it go to voicemail. When I checked the message later, my stomach dropped. It was my own voice, whispering. And in the background, someone else was breathing. I used to work the front desk at a small hotel. The night shift was always the same, quiet, monotonous, just checking in the occasional weary traveler. But every so often a guest would come down with a look I'll never forget, a look of pure, silent terror. One night, at around 2 a.m., a man stumbled into the lobby. He was shaking, his face slick with sweat. His eyes darted to the hallway behind him, as if something might be following. "I need another room," he said, voice low, urgent. I frowned. "What's wrong with yours?" He swallowed hard. His hands gripped the counter. "There's someone in it." A chill prickled my skin. That wasn't possible. Our system showed his room as unoccupied before he checked in. No other key had been issued. I hesitated, then grabbed the master key and called security. We rode the elevator up in tense silence. The man refused to look at the floor indicator, his breath coming in short gasps. When we reached the door, I knocked. No answer. I opened the door slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears. The room was empty, perfectly empty. The bed was neatly made, the air stale, untouched. Nothing looked disturbed, but the man refused to step inside. "I'm not staying here," he muttered, backing away. Something was in here, watching me. I exchanged glances with the security guard and nodded. We gave him another room, and he disappeared down the hall, never looking back. Later that night, I felt uneasy. Something about the whole encounter gnawed at me. So I checked the security footage. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Just the man entering his room, the door closing behind him. Minutes passed. Then, at exactly 1:47 a.m., my stomach clenched. The door to his room opened. Slowly. No one was there. No one had entered. The door simply swung open as if inviting something in or letting something out. And then something stepped into the hallway. Not a person, not really. A shape, tall and thin, its proportions slightly off, like a shadow stretched too far, It moved unnaturally, gliding more than walking, its head tilting as if searching for something. Searching for him? I leaned in closer to the screen, my breath hitching. The thing paused at the edge of the camera's frame, and then it turned. Though the footage was grainy, I could swear its face was wrong, shifting as if it couldn't settle on a single shape. It moved down the hall, disappearing beyond the blind spot of the camera. I rewound the footage, again and again. The door opening on its own, the thing stepping out, moving down the hall, but the scariest part? It had been in the room before he ever checked in. The next day, housekeeping refused to clean it. They wouldn't say why, just that something felt wrong. When I pressed them, one of them hesitated before whispering, "We found something in the closet." I asked what. They didn't answer right away. Then finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, the cleaner said, "Claw marks." Deep ones, like something had been trying to get out. I never looked inside that room again, and I never, ever worked another night shift. I was working the late shift at a small-town diner. The place was empty, except for one customer, a man in a dark hoodie sitting alone in the corner booth. He never ordered anything, never moved. Just sat there, hands flat on the table, staring. Something about him made my skin crawl. Every time I looked at him, a wave of nausea hit me, like I wasn't supposed to see him. Hours passed, the clock dragged toward 3 a.m. I turned away for just a second, just to refill a coffee pot. And when I looked back, he was gone. A chill ran through me. I walked over to his booth, my breath shallow. The seat was still warm. Then I saw it. Scratched into the table, my name. I never told him my name. The silence pressed in. My pulse pounded in my ears. And then the door chime rang. The night shift is quiet. Too quiet. But in that silence, something watches. Something waits. Sleep well, if you can.